Okay, thank you very much. So thank you very much for joining us. My colleague Lindsay is back there, so I'm co-teaching with her.
Okay, yes.
Our group is a second year product design course. We have around 15, 17 students. They
Yes.
are almost all present here. Here is kind of early, so
Yeah.
everybody's a bit sleepy, even though I asked
Sure.
them to have an extra coffee.
Oh,
So
yeah.
thank you very much. Thank you very much, Jinan, for joining us, and we are all yours. We are all ears.
Sure, sure, sure.
I have your presentation here in the other screen, so when you want to skip past a new slide, just let me know.
No, that may be a little difficult because I won't know what is the, I don't know the sequence also. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, okay, okay. So maybe I will do an extempore. I won't, refer to the, what you call that, to the PowerPoint. I think that is okay, no?
So I have it. Just send me a PDF.
Yes.
I have it on the screen back, so you cannot see it, but it's on the back in the wall.
Yeah.
And I have the first slide, so I can guide you a little bit on what is it that we are seeing. If you want to use some of the slides that you send me.
Aha, that may be better. Yes, yes, yes. So
So the computer went off.
I
So
should have actually organized one more computer, no?
so we are seeing the title which says "Human Beings to Human Knowings."
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. So let me just let me also see if I can download the mail I sent you,
Okay.
so I can use my this use this and talk. That may be easier, no?
Okay. Okay. Yeah. You told me you travel. No, you are not in your regular.
Yes, yes. I'm in somebody's house actually.
Okay. No worries. We have time.
Yeah, yeah. So I'll give you a brief introduction. Actually, personally, I studied design, and but I had done engineering before that, and I've actually gone through a kind of a crisis in my fourth year, wondering why this whole education is happening. Because I found that in the scenario that I am in, I couldn't get, meet anybody who is truly interested in learning. Everybody had good marks, but there was no commitment to learning. So I naturally, kind of dropped out and started spending time with children. And, that is my beginning of inquiry into what is learning. I think that context should be, shared with you, that why is that I'm doing this kind of exploration. So when I spent a little time in the school, and then I no, came back, took the degree, and after a year or so, I joined product design, design education, and I felt that design education is far more kind of dangerous to our sensibilities, because see, this whole educational paradigm that we as Indians go through is nothing but a recolonization of our minds. Because all the knowledge is getting created in the West, which is being, imported to us. All universities in India are doing nothing but, distributing what knowledge gets produced in the West. So this was something very disturbing, you know. And so at design, I encountered this even more deeply, because I realized that not only our information level conditioning and emotional level conditioning, we are also conditioned at the sense level. What I mean by this is that even your aesthetic sense is completely conditioned. So we only learn Bauhaus, all that kind of things, uh, and I really believe that a culture is defined by three aspects. One is its ability to create knowledge. Second is its authentic aesthetic sensibility, and third its worldview. Now, all the three are imported from the West, and we are living on that. So I also find that the meaning of the word culture quite meaningless in that sense, because uh, we are just being engineered. There's no culture anymore, because it's an engineering that is happening, engineered minds that is getting produced. So at NID, I spent deeply the time trying to understand what is this whole business of, I took NID space as a kind of an exploratory space. So 3 years I did exploration as to understand what is culture, what is learning, what is beauty, how it gets formed, those kind of things. And luckily, uh, you know, I also started making things with hand, and that's a very important shift. Because I realized that there is much more deeper crisis than just colonization. I feel that modern education is very detrimental for development of natural human cognition, because we are only learning to analyze somebody's information. So it's a mind that is getting developed. And what is also happening is that the mind and body is getting fragmented, because we are no longer using our body in the act of knowledge. Our senses become dysfunctional. So at NID, what I began to do was that I began to work with hands, and the normal procedure is that you sit, on the table, plan, design, then go and start doing. So you're already fragmenting these two activities, that doing and thinking. Thinking is always preceding, and then based on your thinking, you go and do. This is what is normally happens. Somehow, something in me made me rebel against this, and I began to start working with hands. And I found that as I began to work with hands, I found that thinking is something that is happening as part of that. It's almost like thinking with hands. It's no longer thought as a separate activity. As you're doing, thought began to generate. You begin to understand clay, not as a prior experience, but as you touch clay, as you begin to do it. So I think one key, exploration I did was probably to get my body back into the act of knowing. Um, so different experiments I did, and then after NID, after design education, I started working with rural tribal communities. So it is with rural tribal communities that I began another kind of a deeper experiment, in which, because see, normally the notion that is being told to the educated is that you are very developed, you are educated, and you have to go and help the rural tribal illiterate people. That is the normal message that is given to an educated person. But when I went and started living with rural tribal communities, I realized that this story is not right. I realized that they are the ones who are rooted in their culture, rooted in, and they are not being conditioned by a Western aesthetic sensibility, nor they are borrowing the knowledge that West is providing, but they are actually actively producing knowledge. They are rooted in their aesthetic sensibilities. See, the proof is that you go to any modern city in the world today. I mean, you take India, go to any modern city. All cities are alive. That is because they are designed by architects who learn the same thing. So their aesthetic sensibility is the same. You go to any village in this country, in India I'm talking about, and you will find that each village, they are culturally diverse, different aesthetic sensibilities, different ways of building. So you see that diversity actually exists in people who are not being schooled into one homogeneous kind of thought. So the diversity is very evident in their way of life, in what they produce, in the houses they make, their lifestyle, in all those things. So my work with life with the rural tribal communities gave me a kind of a two comparative study. One, people who have not been schooled Other one, people are being schooled. No? And personally, another thing that I did was I stopped reading completely. Completely, I quit reading. And after a few years, I found that my system reorganized. What I'm talking about is that simple statement is that literates learn the word. Literates learn the word, and illiterates learn the world. Do you understand? So, and we are biologically equipped to learn the world, not the word. Our eyes, our senses are really equipped by nature. We are biological beings. Our biology allow us is made so that we see the world, we sense the world, and we make sense of it in the process of nature. So so I began to personally I began to engage with this kind of an exploration as to how do I rework on my it happened. I mean, I didn't purposely do it, but as I stopped reading, I found that I'm able to see, number one, my reasoning began to slowly disappear, because we are now trapped all the time in reasoning. And reasoning is a gift of reading, because that's the only thing you can do is to reason, think, you think, reasoning, thinking, reading, reasoning, thinking, reading. It's a continuous ongoing process. So the moment I quit reading and I began to see, I realized that reasoning has no role here. Because you're seeing what is there to see, reason and, say that this is something. You're already seeing it. But this whole reading is nothing but, you see, a few days ago, I happened to, listen to Marshall McLuhan, the medium of the message, no? And he was telling that the word reading actually comes from, the root meaning comes from a word called, from Latin somewhere, the meaning is guessing. So so he's talking about, by reading we are only doing rapid guessing, The thing is anyway absent. We are only making a guesswork here. We are imagining actually. Whereas eyes are not imagining, it's actually seeing. There's nothing to imagine, there's nothing to reason about and make us understand something, You see something and understanding is taking place. It's not a choice. And I also began to deeply look at, the life of the village people. How the design, and there are a few fundamental differences that I found between these two ways of, I talk about ways of being, not just learning. Our beingness is changed by the way from our cognitive source, meaning the context. Context basically forms you. And I found that the rural community, the illiterate, let's call them illiterates, people who don't read and write, but they use their senses, they belong to what I call as the process cultures. We belong to the product culture, because we are dealing with knowledge. There is no process called knowing by which we create knowledge. We are already using ready-made knowledge. So naturally we are in the realm of products. So what's also interesting is that I found that these two languages also are very different. The literate language has far more nouns, whereas the illiterate language has far more verbs, because they're actually doing. So there are these very, very fundamental differences that I found between, and other very interesting thing I realized was that there is no concept of waste there. Waste. So there always into a recycling mode. Recycling is not an activism for them. It's not an afterthought. Recycling is the way of life, because recycling is the way of nature. So it's not an anthropocentric idea. It's the idea of life. That there is recycling that is continuously happening, and people who live in nature, who are not alienated from nature, who are using their biological propensity to understand the world, are nature itself. So this also deeply led me to understand how actually children learn. I began to explore the process of how children learn, because another difference I found between modern culture and illiterate cultures is that among illiterate cultures there is no teaching, there is only learning. Teaching is a very modern invention actually. Teaching was necessitated after literacy came into picture, because literacy demanded a certain conscious act of learning. So it's very, very new actually, compared to, it's not our natural propensity. Seeing, and hearing, speaking, all that is part of our nature. Whereas reading is not. Reading is an acquired, ability. And which demands a certain kind of setup, certain kind of activity, what we call as teaching, So this is the basic difference I found between these two cultures, and I began to deeply look into, how children learn. Other thing that I want to talk about is that I have also been going in many schools, and at the initial stage, I was also trying to make the schools better, or find out how to teach children better, find out how to make them more creative. This is because we are trapped in a paradigm called teaching. But the moment I began to explore, I asked a different question called how children learn, as opposed to how do we want to teach them. The moment I began to explore how children learn, I realized that question is leading us to different answers. You see, it depends on the question that we ask. If we ask how to teach children better, we will find better books. We'll maybe make stories, make different things we do, make the schools colorful, all kinds of things, but to teach children. That is the question that we are starting off with. The moment we ask what children learn, whether they learn naturally, how do they learn, what do they learn, the whole scenario is different. The questions are different. Then we are looking at something else altogether after that. And this is what I did for almost 25 years, to explore what is actually children learning actually. How do they do that? So I also ran a school for 3 years in a city called Pune, and I called it Reimagining Schools, where the premise I kept was that there's no teaching happening. We were just trying to understand children, and we have made almost 4,000 videos on children in their spontaneous activity. They were not trapped in the classroom. We were not, there were no content curriculum to be taught. They were completely free. 3 years of, leading a very natural life. This also gave me a deep insight into a lot of misunderstandings that the modern minds have created about children and learning process. We create terms like play and toy. These are two important terms that to look at. Play is an activity that we have created, and toy is an object, a very well-defined product, toy. But as I began to look deeply into children, I realized that playfulness is a quality. It's not an activity. So whatever children do is playful. Whether they are eating, simply sitting on a chair, every activity is done playfully. And we misunderstand that as an activity called play, because we have created another category called learning. So we are creating these categories and looking through these categories. So naturally we are finding these things, because our mind is already, conditioned and blocked to see the world the way we want to see. And toy is another very interesting thing that, any object the child play with is toy. There is nothing called a permanent toy. A simple thing like a mobile phone can be turned into a child. The moment they keep it like this, breastfeeding the child, they will imagine this as the child. So basically, all play, all toy making, all this has to do with re-experiencing the world, reinventing the world, recreating the world, So whatever has been their experience, that is being re-experienced, Actually, I have kind of given you a kind of a gist of what I have wanted to talk to you. and the presentation has lots of images of two things. One is of what I call as the 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 activities, the products that people have made with what we call as waste. There is no term waste in rural, in their language. Waste is a very modern concept. They don't have a word at all. So it is not in their consciousness to waste. So whatever object is there, they make, and not with an activist mind. It's natural to them, just to So recycling process of but they are more into work. They are not into making a product. They are into solving a problem. This is a basic shift, So one series of products, as you can see, is, and I purposely shot things that they were making use of plastic, for example, They are not fighting with plastic. Yes.
I'll show you what we are seeing now. So we are showing them this, and I think that goes with your what you were saying. We're seeing some toys made out of what we could call waste here.
Yes.
Please, go ahead.
Yeah. So shall I continue or?
Yes, please.
So I have actually decoded what actually a child does. As product designers, we will find it much more easier, because see, what the child is exploring is the form, function, process, materials, and the structure. You will find that every activity the child is doing autonomously has to do with exploring these attributes of the world. Everything has a form. Everything has a function, and there is a process by which it is made, and the materials will have structural properties. So So if you look at the maybe the last few slides,
yes.
it probably talks it talks about that how children explore form, function, process. I can quickly actually maybe share with you what I'm talking about. Can you take a book from here? Just give me 1 minute.
Of course, yes, no worries.
Any book, small book, small book. You see, in children, in our place, children keep a book like this on the table, and they say, "This is house," because the form and resemblance of a house is being explored by children. So I will only take house as an example to tell you how function, process, phenomena, all that is being explored. So this is a study of form when they keep a book like this. And when they put on a table, they put a bed sheet, and they say this is a house. And at that time, they are making use of the functional aspect of the house. They are using the space, enclosed space. So they are not interested in the form; they are interested in the space called house. And then another one they do is that they keep playing, like they will maybe reenact a marriage or somebody falling ill, some doctor coming. So the day-to-day events that happens in the house is being repeated by children. And the other thing is actually making house, in which they create the making of a house where they explore the structural aspect of it, So, and I have actually thousands of videos and images of this to maybe I can share that with you. It is also there in the Academy site where I have re-looked at this whole idea of toy and things like that,
Yeah. We will look at them. I will share those links you send me with them.
Yeah. So one basic thing that I want to see. So what happened was that when I stopped reading completely, I was able to clearly see the modern knowledge system far more clearly than people who are trapped within the modern knowledge system. That how fragmentation is taking place, because we use certain terms like holistic. There's a term called holistic. Am I right? Yes. There is a term that is being used as holistic, that we have to be holistic. So we are thinking that fragmentation is our default stage. Or another example is that we talk about out of the box thinking. That's again a very common phrase that is being used, out of the box thinking. Assuming that inside the box is our default. So we are not exploring how did we enter the box. So there are much more. There are much more things that you can, basically, this reimagination and the rework with my children and my own cognitive process has given me access to another way of knowing, which has to do with senses, and frankly, I feel that it is the context that is creating different ways of knowing. What I'm talking about is that I talk about three paradigms. The first paradigm is paradigm of the world. You use your senses and understand the world. Second is paradigm of the text, the printed word. So you read the world and you are converted into a different kind of being, a being that is fragmented because we talk about reductionism, and we blame it on that poor Descartes. He's not the one who did this, The printing press is what actually reduced the world into the world. And reasoning is because that we are dealing with text. We are dealing with ready-made knowledge. Reading is what generates reasoning in you. Reading doesn't generate observation, attention. Anything that has to do with your senses is not being activated by reading. It makes you think. Your eyes are formed, are structured, or to think. It's not seeing anymore. So senses become dysfunctional. So it creates another way of being and knowing. And the third, what I feel is that the third one is after the image came into the source of knowledge. For example, films, television, and now the digital world. So that is giving the senses are again getting reawakened, but not in the manner that the world will awaken you. It's again restricted to, miniaturized, edited, images, So it's not like seeing the world, which is right in front of you, which is huge. So I'm very sorry that I'm not able to follow the slide and
No, don't worry.
But some gist has been given.
We are exploring your slides, and we have found what you are talking about. So it makes total sense. So just don't worry. Just you can go on.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Maybe I can now open it up, so that we can have some, some dialogue or something like that.
Yeah, that would be great. I don't know if there is anyone with comments or questions so far. Is nothing so far? Yes.
The way that you're describing teaching or not teaching is very similar to how I was raised, because I homeschooled for most of my life, and it's really nice to see you so passionate about this kind of learning, and seeing it as equal to any other kind of learning.
Could you hear her?
No, I couldn't hear anything. So could you repeat that?
Okay. So speak up.
Okay. I was kind of raised how you are describing your kind of learning, because I was homeschooled. Can you hear?
Voice is breaking, actually. Voice is breaking.
Okay. I guess the speaker is probably not good.
Well, it's the connection that is not good. Can you speak up a little bit? kind of.
No, I'm able to hear Victor, but
Yeah.
You have to stick closer.
Okay, I know. You can yell at me. No, it's okay.
He said he can hear Victor, but he can't hear you.
so maybe
Very bad.
you could repeat it, or
Yes. She will try
Okay,
again.
I'm going to come a bit closer. I was raised and taught, or not taught, similar to how you're describing learning, because I homeschooled for most of my life. So it's very nice to see someone so passionate about it and see it as, as equal or above traditional learning or traditional educational systems.
yeah. Um,
Okay.
yeah.
So I don't know if you are aware, that was something new for me when I arrived to Canada. There is this option when you are taking your kids to school. There is the option of not taking them to school, and you can teach them directly at home. I'm not really sure how it works, but it's called homeschooling.
Yeah.
I'm imagining that we'll have to meet certain criteria in order then to go into higher education.
It's different for different programs.
It's different programs.
Everyone does it differently.
Okay, but there is a guide that you have to follow, or
You can if you want, and then you don't have to.
okay, so you could, but you don't have to. I was just you give us lots of information, really interesting. So one of the first things that I was writing on the whiteboard, it was the first questions that you were asking yourself about what is culture and what is beauty. And I remember that there was in the PhD emailing list, there was a discussion precisely about beauty, that you were saying, the hard science scientist could not really appreciate beauty. And then the reaction was, okay, well, that's well, not exactly their words, but they said more or less like that's not fair, no, because they can find beauty in the way that atoms react, or in the way that galaxies are formed. So it will be if I don't know if you could explore a little bit, because I don't think there is a universal concept of beauty, as is not as culture, and one relates to the other. So one of the things that I was wondering is I totally agree with you that this really persuasive information level conditioning coming from the West is present all over, and that is killing diversity. But how can we, after probably in some cases hundreds of years of colonization, how can we explain and how can we make others understand that other concepts of beauty and other concepts of culture is as value as their own, as theirs, and how can we, I don't know, it's a very complicated question probably, how can we convince that other ways of knowing are as valuable as the classic that we have been influenced by?
Yeah. You see, one of the problems that I'm finding with the mainstream exploration of decolonization is that the reference point is still the Western paradigm. So the other day I remember somebody talked about women's way of knowing. The terminology was used, women's way of knowing.
We have
so
used that.
See,
yes.
I feel that there is only. This is again, I find, a fragmentation of a modern mind which is thinking that there is a man's way of knowing and a women's way of knowing. What I believe is that the senses are, what has happened, this is what my take is that, when we moved into textual way of knowing, the reasoning and reading and all that, the whole culture was turned into masculine. So the what I would like to say is that the sense-based knowing encompasses both the left brain and the right brain. The body and the mind function together in the non-literate communities. Whereas the moment you shift into text-based learning, your body, your senses, your qualities of being feminine, everything that has to do with sensibilities are taken away. So what has happened is that everything has been turned into a mental activity, including beauty. So modern art today is a concept, a thing that you have to think about. Beauty is not something that you see and experience, or it has moved into see and think.
Oh no. So we lost you. Oh my god.
Sometimes it's Skype, we have to just reconnect.
Yeah, just hang up and call back.
Yeah, maybe it's better.